What is up, everybody? How is it going? Austin Prechtelevate Performance, coming at you live. Happy Wednesday. It's Winning Wednesday. As you guys are tuning in, as you are all tuning in, let me know how your day is going. We're going to get this kicked off here in just a second. I'm going to be talking about something that a lot of people are probably, have thought about if they've been on a weight loss journey at some point. Something that they might be worried about. And so that being loose skin. And I've talked about this in the past. I've done lives on this in the past, but it's been a while since I've done one. And there's some other things that I kind of want to mention this time around that we're talking about it. And maybe you're new to my network. Maybe you're new to, following me or whatever. And so if you are, this is going to be fresh information for you. So yeah, we're going to be talking about loose skin and how to avoid getting, or how to prevent loose skin as much as possible, how to potentially avoid it, and then just kind of just telling you and just being fully transparent, like the straight up like truth when it comes to loose skin, because a lot of times there's misleading information out there about loose skin, which is not cool. I don't like being lied to. I don't think you guys should be lied to either. So loose skin though. So let's paint a picture here, right? So you were overweight at one point in time, right? And you want to lose weight, right? And so part of losing weight a lot of times that's a big concern for a lot of people is having loose skin after they go through a weight loss journey or weight loss transformation. And typically when folks go through something like that, they want to feel like they are being rewarded for their hard work, right? For reaching their goals. And sometimes, and this is person to person, some people like to wear their loose skin as a badge of honor, and to those people, I think that that's fucking awesome. And that's like your choice, and like that's what you like and what you want, and that's great. And I think that that's great for you. Some people though, like they get to that, they're like, man, I put all in this hard work and everything like that, and I want to have the aesthetic that I was going for, and you reach your goal, and then oftentimes that may not be the case necessarily, and so that can be pretty discouraging, or it can mess with your confidence and things like that. And so I can't say what option is best. It's a matter of what you prefer, but regardless, really does depend on a couple of factors, or several factors actually. And so I'm going to mention those. So what can depend on? So I'm going to talk about what loose skin, how much you could have, what that's going to depend on, and then I'm going to talk about how to help prevent it as much as possible if that's your goal. So when it comes to what determines whether or not somebody's going to have a lot of excess loose skin after they've lost a bunch of weight, is one, the person. Sometimes it comes down to the individual, right? Sometimes it comes down to the individual. The genetics, right? Some people are predisposed to having more loose skin than others. Some people are. Whenever I bulked a little bit too hard, I got up to like 240 pounds, and I had pretty much zero loose skin, right? Why that may have been could be a couple of these other factors that I'm going to talk about. One of those being age, right? As you get older, your body doesn't necessarily bounce back as quickly, and so that is one thing that could be at play here. Let's see, interested in this topic, like hey, yeah, for sure, I appreciate that. And so guys, it varies person to person. Age is a factor, right? Genetics are a factor. How long and you overweight for? How much overweight were you compared to? So if you're like 10 pounds overweight, compared to a couple 100 pounds overweight, that's going to make a big difference in terms of how much your body, the skin is stretched and things like that. And so these are all factors that can play a role in what determines how much loose skin you're going to have, if any, right? Like I just talked about, I was probably a good like between 40 and 60 pounds overweight compared to where like my kind of like lean status would be. Maybe even honestly, if you think about it, like 60 plus, yeah, maybe even like 70, 80 pounds over where my lean kind of like my lean weight would be at. And so, but I didn't have any, right? But these are things that are at play here, right? I'm young. I was young when I did that. I was not at that weight for very long. I was at that weight for maybe a couple of months before I started before I started my cut, before I got to the point where I was like, man, like this is hard. Like it is difficult to be, at I ate adequate amounts of protein during my cut. I did it at a slow and steady rate, right, of a sustainable rate, about half a pound to 2 pounds lost per week. So it wasn't just rapid, drastic weight loss. Another thing, and so those are some factors at play here, right? And also, I had a decent amount of lean body mass, a decent amount of muscle, um, you know, while I was doing that, like as a bodybuilder. So I had a lot of muscle there to kind of like help that likely play a role in that as well. And so, what are the things though? So now we just talked about like what can impact loose skin, right? If you're gonna have it or not. Let's talk about what you can do as much as possible to try and help prevent loose skin going forward. Um, and I do not want to lead anybody on to be thinking that like if I do these things perfectly, I'm not going to have any loose skin. Because the fact of the matter is that you could do all these things perfectly and you may still have loose skin. That's just I like to tell people straight up and be honest from the get go because I don't want to be like Austin said if I do these things I'm not going to have any. No, you could very well, and you might, like I said, depending on those factors that I talked about. But these are the things that you can do to give yourself the best chance possible to reduce the amount of loose skin that you may have, or prevent it entirely, depending on where you're at in your journey right now and how overweight you were and some of the other factors that I talked about. So first one, right? First one, I see a comment here. I heard collagen helps, and that is something we'll talk about here in just a second. And so number one though, guys, strength training, strength training, strength training, strength training. Working out and having a strength training program, an exercise program that involves strength training, is so important when it comes to helping prevent loose skin. Because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be helping build muscle in those areas. You're going to be recomping your body during this process, and so that's one of the main things that you can do to help prevent loose skin is having a strength training program that you follow during your weight loss journey. Not a lot of people do that. Not a lot of people do that. A lot of people, whenever they're trying to lose weight, they're just they think I'm going to do a bunch of cardio, I'm going to starve myself, and that's how I'm going to lose weight. That is probably going to that's probably going to make it worse, honestly. And I'm going to talk about why here in just a second, but strength training, having a strength training program, strength training 3 to 5 times a week, right? That's a good general rule of thumb for about 30 to 60 minutes. I talked about yesterday. If you didn't see my video from yesterday, go check it out on my. You need to do if you want to lose like 5 pounds in the month of May, and I go over how to strength train properly in that. So that's the first thing, strength training. Number two, you want to go slow and steady, right? I know whenever people start a fitness journey or weight loss journey, like I want to see fast progress. I want to get there as fast as possible. I want to reach my goals. I want to be skinny by this date or whatever. But like, don't come at your fitness journey or weight loss journey with that mindset because what you're going to do is you're going to one try to rush the process and probably end up quitting because it's going to be unsustainable from the get-go. And two, the slower that you lose the weight, the less like drastic like shift to your body it's going to be. So if you're losing weight sustainably and a half a pound to 2 pounds lost per week, like that gives your body time to slowly kind of like adapt to where it's at, like for your body to recomp effectively, for your skin not to just go like from like being super stretched out to being like like not. And so like there are some like physiological like advantages to slow and steady weight loss when it comes to loose skin. So, going slower, steadier, probably going to give you a higher chance of maintaining your progress and reaching your goals in the long term. So that's another thing. So slow and steady weight loss, half a pound to 2 pounds lost per week. That's great. That's amazing progress. Don't let anybody else tell you anything different. And yeah, you're gonna be glad that you did it that way in the long term. You're not gonna care how long it took you to get there. You're just gonna be happy that you got there at the end of the day. The next thing, and this is something that I think more research needs to be done on, but they're finding that fasting could potentially play a role in helping with loose skin, and so that's something that you could look into a little bit more. I am not going to pretend like I'm an expert on fasting when it comes to loose skin prevention, but I will say that I've been hearing more information and more talks and more people talking about how fasting could be a potential aid in that regard. Again, is that like maybe the best option for you? It might not be. And whether or not the benefits are seen from intermittent fasting versus like an actual fast, like, I honestly I haven't looked into it that much yet. I just know that that is a potential resource of helping with preventing loose skin. So that's something that I would say that you could look into as well. And so the other two things that I want to talk about here. One, adequate protein intake. If you are trying to lose weight and you want to prevent loose skin and you want to recomp your body as best as possible, working out is part of that equation. The other part that is, just as important, if not more, is protein intake. Making sure that you're getting an adequate amount of protein in on a daily basis is so important because that's what's going to allow your body. Your body cannot make muscle or rebuild or repair your muscle from your workouts without protein. Like, you just can't. You can't do it with carbs. You can't do it with fat. There has to be protein. And so if you're not getting enough of that and you're losing weight, which is putting your body in a state of atrophy, like an environment where muscle atrophy is has a higher chance of happening. Because if you don't know this, anytime you lose weight, you're going to lose fat, but you're also going to lose some muscle. No matter what, you're going to lose a little bit of muscle no matter what. So strength training and adequate protein intake and adequate other, the other macro intake as well during your calorie deficit are super important to preventing muscle loss. Because a lot of times people will just, they lose a ton of muscle along with the fat, and then they're not happy with how they look or feel during their when they reach their goal. And so getting adequate protein in is super important for this, guys. It's super important for this. And anywhere from 1 gram, like typically it's like 0.75 to like 1.25 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. But in general, like, I try to stick to just 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass. And so, if and the other thing too is like, for me, like I weigh like I'm weigh right now I'm between like 183 and 190. Let's just say that. So, for me, if I was trying to lose weight, you might want to play it safe and go a little bit more than that. But for me, that's probably anywhere from 165 to 185 grams of protein per day. I'm probably golden. I'm not going to run the risk of increasing muscle atrophy, which would in turn especially if you're if you have to lose a lot of weight to reach your goal, that is going to be something that's going to help out a lot with preventing loose skin as much as possible. So the more muscle that you can like save during more lean body mass, the more muscle that you guys have, the higher your metabolism will be in general, just because your body requires more energy, calories to like maintain, higher lean body mass during that. So yeah, so there's all these things that are going to be good about getting protein in and strength training during your fat loss goal or during your fat loss journey, during your weight loss journey. So, and then the last thing I'll say, guys, right, is that there is no shame in the surgery game, right? And you may be thinking like, oh, you're a fitness coach, or you're a weight loss coach, like fat loss coach, like you, and you're telling me that I should get surgery. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that you should, and I'm not saying that you should wear your loose skin as a badge of honor. Like, only you can make that decision for yourself at the end of the day, because you're the one. It's your body. Like, you're the one living that life in that body, and so the decision is yours, right? But if you're unhappy with your loose skin, because you can do everything that I just said and it will help. It definitely can't hurt, right? But at the end of the day, some people, just based on where they got to and versus where they're coming from, no shame, or there's nothing wrong with getting cosmetic surgery to put you where you want to be. You put the work in to lose all that weight, to build that muscle, and to get down to this base where you're like happy, or where you want to be at, and you want to be happy. And if you want to get cosmetic surgery to fix that, or to create the aesthetic that you're going for, yeah, who am I to tell you not to do that? Like, I think that that's your decision. I think that you should do whatever is going to make you happy and is going to make you feel, like, your best self, your confident self, like, whatever it is that you want for yourself. I think you should go for that. One thing I will say, do not make the mistake of doing it too early, right? Do not make the mistake of going through cosmetic surgery too soon before you get to where you want to be when it comes to your goals, because you never know, like, you don't want to get part of the way through get the cosmetic surgery like like too early, and then gain it back or get injured or something like that happens, or you get sick or something like that, and then you can't follow through with the rest of it, and then you may gain some of that back. Like you want to make sure that you're in a place where you're like stable at your base. But just if you want the best like results like aesthetically for what you're going for from that cosmetic surgery, like get to your goal weight first, then go for it. Don't do it like halfway through. You don't want to run the risk of yo-yoing back and then spending all that time and money, and also like after you get surgery, you're gonna be not bedridden, but you're gonna be incapacitated to an extent, and you want to be at a place where like you're okay with maybe gaining 5, 10, 15 pounds potentially because you can't move as much, and maybe you don't feel good, and your nutrition may be off and things like that. And so these are just very real things and like real conversations I think we need to have when it comes to stuff. What's up, Brandy? How's it going? When it comes to weight loss goals and loose skin, and again, I'm not like a cosmetic surgeon or anything like that, but these are just things that make sense to me in my mind when it comes to um, you know once you reach your goals in terms of preventing loose skin. And like I said, you could do all these things I talked about and you may still have loose skin, and that's okay, right? Either own it, or if you're not happy with it, do something about it, to get you to where you want to be. But at the end of the day, support you in that. So other than that, though, that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you have a good ass rest of your Wednesday. Feel free to give this video a like, share, drop any questions or comments that you have about this, and feel free to let me know your number one takeaway in the comments down below. And if you're watching this later time on Facebook or YouTube, feel free to say hashtag replay, so that way I know you saw it. But other than that, I will talk to you all later. I'm going to do a little Q&A on TikTok here real quick. So have a good rest of your day, guys. Bye.